Well, hello there, human tippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough indeed to be doing it too. I'm BLITZ. Welcome back to the channel. This intro has taken about 7 or 8 attempts because I feel a little bit miffed about this tank. I feel a little bit ready to rumble and controversial because I feel like I should say this is an outrage, but I keep talking myself in circles during the intro. So I'm just going to go with talking about the tank and we'll see what comes up, right? This is the Smasher. It's the very expensive Tier 7 Heavy that popped up. Now, if you are rating purchase value, then this thing is not that expensive. It's actually worth the money because it's a very unique vehicle. This is a weird thing to have in the game. And I've made this argument a couple of times that the Borsig's been nerfed out the Yin Yang as a Tier 8 TD, and it's a different tank to this, but it's a Tier 8 TD with a 150mm gun they keep nerfing, and this thing is basically an SU-152. That's what this tank is, with a more accurate gun, slightly less rounds per minute, a turret and armor. And I mean, there are various other vagaries and differences to this tank, but the Smasher is a Tier 7 tank with a 150mm gun that I run the refined gun on it, which brings it down to 0.371 dispersion, and it's got plenty of penetration on its HE to pen Tier 6 and Tier 7 targets. This is a 150mm gun that sees Tier 6 targets, that has 1,350 hit points, that can side scrape to a degree and can, you know, just inflict god-awful amounts of damage. 768 high roll. Before the patch, I had played a lot of games in the Smasher, and I hadn't actually done that well in it. But I knew it was one of those situations where I knew it was not the fault of the tank. Where the reason I hadn't done well in the tank was because I started off and lost 9 games straight in it, and it was because everyone was dead in the first minute of the game or AFK in spawn. And it was no bearing upon the tank. What was happening was I was getting the chance to basically fire a round off as I got overwhelmed by the entire team. And I persevered with it because I knew the tank was just too good to be that kind of tank. And of course, it's started to perform. And in the game since, it has performed just superbly. And because the patch came, I lost all the replays that I saved. I play while my son's at basketball training and I'm sitting on the sidelines. I'll generally play BLITZ so I can get games in. But I'm just struggling for time to actually play games, let alone create the content at the moment. So the patch came and I lost all the replays. And so I had to do it again. And the first 4 games I had were over 3,000 or at 3,000. And it was just like, oh my God, this is exactly what I thought the tank was going to be like. And the basis of this whole tank is that it is an SU-152 with a 150mm gun coming up against targets who quite simply cannot absorb the punishment of a 150mm gun, particularly not when it's got 250mm of heat pen to deal with the nasties, and can splash damage tanks like Tigers and VK100s for 300 and 400 a hit. You can just snapshot splash HE for massive amounts of damage on these tanks. And if you get side shots with AP, then you can really pump big heavy tanks. And look at, it's like a 183 rolled into one. It's nuts, okay? The KV2 is a pretty silly tank, but it suffers from so many things. This just feels so much better than a KV2 with more hit points, but it's at Tier 7. And it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal vehicle. I cannot recommend it highly enough if you just want to drive a tank that performs. It is, I will tell you now, it has probably the worst camouflage of any tank I've ever driven. Like, the camo is absolutely 100% god awful. But that being said, it has to be god awful, because this thing, if it was able to be particularly good in terms of camouflage, it would be broke AF. It would be absolutely horrifying to deal with. As it is absolutely horrifying to deal with. Like, you're going to see a couple of shots in here. Like, the shots that I've not included because the patch stole them from me are the shots that I was taking on the sides of American and British heavies, there is an area above the tracks where you can hit for 1,000 damage on tanks like T-32s and T-34s, Carnarvons. This is the same on a lot of Russian mediums, Object 140s, T-62As, T-54s. People don't realise this, but if you show the side of your tank to a high explosive round in those tanks, you will get full penned by a good player for 1,000 damage. And that is no joke, yo. Don't ever do it to a Jaegeru or a 183. It is begging for an absolute demolition. Anyway, I digress. The tank upsets me because it's just... Like, if you drive a T-30, which is basically the same as a T-95, but with a turret in terms of gun, you lose a little bit of gun handling and you get a completely different tank. Doesn't have the armor profile, etc. You drive a T110E4, which is the same as a T110E3, but with a turret. And thanks very much, FCM50T, for blocking me there. That's great, mate. No, situational awareness is a credit to you and your family. Then you get a tank that is very similar in terms of certain aspects of its appearance, but not nearly as strong armor profile-wise and slightly less valuable gun-wise. This tank is an SU-152. It is so much stronger armor profile-wise and so ever so slightly worse in terms of reload. Yet its dispersion makes it so much more accurate than that tank. The SU-152 dreams of being able to run around it with a .371 dispersion gun. And you can side scrape and you can bounce shots. I have now bounced kill shots from a T-54 Mod 1, an IS-5. I mean, I was talking to Meezy about this and he loves it. And it's the same reason Skate loves the 183. And I am completely against these tanks because I think they break game balance. And the problem you have with this is you have to start buffing everything else around it. And you just end up with this endless cycle of power creep. And you know who's to blame? It's not Wargaming. If you don't like this stuff, don't buy these tanks. But you're going to buy these tanks every time. Because as much as there is a hue and cry about this stuff, people love it and people spend money on it. Oh well, if that's what people like, I'll keep reviewing it. Love your work, guys. Look after yourselves, and until next time, stay safe on the battlefield. Bye for now.